Marcus Thorne glided onto Flight 815, his presence a quiet counterpoint to the cabin's frantic energy as passengers wrestled bags into overhead bins. He navigated the crowded aisle with a soft murmur of "pardon me," his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the surrounding buzz as he moved toward his assigned seat by the emergency exit. Several rows behind, Eleanor Vance observed Marcus from behind the glossy shield of her magazine. He had captured her notice the moment he stepped aboard, something in his composed manner setting him apart. Her eyes traced his every move as he stowed his bag and settled in, an unsettling feeling coiling in her gut, a feeling she couldn't quite define. Her fingers tapped a nervous rhythm on the armrest, her mind far from the printed words she stared at, not a single one registering. "Excuse me," Eleanor murmured, her hand rising delicately as Clara, the flight attendant, moved past. Clara paused, her smile a beacon of professional courtesy. "Yes, madam? How may I assist you?" Eleanor cast a fleeting, sharp glance toward Marcus, who was now absorbed in the pages of a book. "That gentleman," she began, her voice a conspiratorial whisper as she leaned toward Clara, "the one positioned at the emergency exit. Is it truly wise to have someone of his sort sitting in such a critical location?" Clara's gaze followed Eleanor's to where Marcus sat, a picture of tranquility, lost in his reading. Her smile remained unwavering. "I can assure you, madam, every passenger on this flight has passed through rigorous security checks. Our seating arrangements are in full compliance with all safety protocols." Eleanor's lips formed a tight, thin line. "It's just that, with all the stories you hear, all the news these days, one feels it's better to be prudent, don't you agree?" Clara's pleasant smile was fixed, though a subtle, almost imperceptible narrowing of her eyes betrayed a flicker of understanding. "If you have a specific concern, please feel free to share it. We want every single one of our passengers to feel completely safe and at ease." She offered a polite nod and then gracefully continued her duties down the aisle. Eleanor watched her depart, a hot spike of irritation piercing her chest. How could the airline staff be so utterly dismissive? Shaking her head, her gaze snapped back to Marcus, who had momentarily set his book aside and was now reaching into his bag. Her mind ignited with possibilities. What could he be reaching for? What dark secret did that bag contain? She shifted, a wave of discomfort washing over her as her eyes remained locked on him. Marcus, entirely oblivious to the intense scrutiny, retrieved his medication and carefully read the label. After a moment he placed it back inside his bag and returned to his book, feeling the week's stress begin to melt away, a sense of peace slowly enveloping him. He was completely unaware of the storm of tension brewing just a few rows behind. Clara, completing her pre-flight duties near the galley, caught the eye of her colleague Leo. Leaning in, she whispered, "Keep a watch on seat 18C. The woman in 22A seems unusually anxious about him." Leo gave a discreet nod. "Will do. What's the problem?" Clara offered a slight shrug. "Nothing I can put my finger on. Just a gut feeling, I suppose." She tried to dismiss the unease, a familiar premonition she'd learned to recognize over years of flying, the subtle sign of potential trouble. It was too soon to know if this was truly one of those times. Eleanor shifted once more, her gaze narrowing, her focus intensifying on Marcus as the roar of the jet engines grew, signaling their imminent departure. Marcus stowed his book and gazed out the window, his expression serene. Eleanor's mind, however, was a turbulent storm of suspicion. Her grip on the armrests tightened, a sense of foreboding settling deep within her chest. As the aircraft taxied onto the runway, Eleanor leaned back, but her eyes never once left Marcus. She couldn't escape the chilling certainty that something was terribly wrong, and if the crew refused to act, she might be forced to take control of the situation herself. The aircraft reached its cruising altitude, and the captain's smooth voice filled the cabin, a warm welcome followed by a brief outline of their journey. The seatbelt sign chimed off, and a sense of routine settled over the passengers. Laptops emerged, movies began to play, and flight attendants commenced their service. Marcus Thorne relaxed into his seat, his gaze drifting across the endless sea of clouds outside his window, feeling the knots of tension in his shoulders finally begin to loosen. He reached for his carry-on, unzipping it to retrieve a small bottle of water. As he did, he caught a flicker of movement in his periphery. Eleanor, her eyes fixed intently upon him. He paused, then brushed it off as a random glance, the kind of idle observation common on long flights. But a few rows back, Eleanor's disquiet was festering, growing. She watched him carefully re-secure the zipper on his bag after taking out the water. What was he so desperately hiding in there? The way he repeatedly checked the bag, as if confirming the safety of its contents, struck her as deeply suspicious. She scanned the other passengers, but they were all lost in their own little worlds, blissfully unaware of what she perceived as an imminent threat. Unable to contain her mounting unease any longer, Eleanor gestured for Clara. The flight attendant noticed the raised hand and approached, her smile as bright and professional as ever. "Yes, madam? Is everything all right?" Clara's tone was light, impeccably courteous. Eleanor leaned in, her voice dropping to a near inaudible whisper, desperate not to attract unwanted attention. "That man?" "The one by the exit. I've been observing him. He's constantly checking his bag, acting as if he's guarding something inside. I truly believe you need to investigate this." Clara glanced toward Marcus, then back to Eleanor, her expression a mask of professional calm. "I understand your concern, madam. But as I explained earlier, we cannot inspect a passenger's personal belongings without a valid reason or a clear sign of wrongdoing. He has caused no disturbance, and his actions appear entirely normal." Eleanor's face hardened. "Normal? How can you possibly say that? People like him. They always seem normal right until the moment they aren't. I've seen it on the news 100 times. We can't just ignore this. What if he has something dangerous in that bag?" Clara's composure remained flawless, her training taking over. "We have extensive security measures in place, madam. Every person on this aircraft has been thoroughly screened. Please try to relax and enjoy the rest of your flight. If you notice any specific concrete action that is alarming, please let us know." Eleanor scoffed, folding her arms tightly across her chest. "You people never take anything seriously until it's far too late," she muttered, just loud enough to be heard. Clara registered the comment but chose to let it pass. With a polite nod, she continued down the aisle, trying to shake off the unsettling encounter. Her experience had taught her to handle such situations with grace. Yet this felt different. There was a dangerous intensity in Eleanor's eyes, a relentless determination that made Clara's own unease grow. Clara deliberately walked past Marcus's row, casting a quick, casual glance in his direction. Sensing the brief shift in attention, Marcus looked up, his eyes meeting hers for a fleeting moment. Clara offered a polite smile, and he responded with a simple nod. The silent exchange was over in a second. She couldn't explain why Eleanor's fear felt so potent, so pressing. It wasn't her first encounter with a nervous passenger, but something about this specific situation gnawed at her. Eleanor watched Clara walk away, a fresh wave of frustration and invalidation washing over her. She looked at the other passengers, some of whom had briefly glanced her way during the exchange, but had now returned to their own devices, utterly unconcerned. Eleanor's annoyance deepened. How could everyone be so blind? She leaned toward her seatmate, a middle-aged woman engrossed in a novel. "Excuse me," Eleanor whispered. "Did you notice that man near the exit? Doesn't he seem off to you?" The woman looked up, startled by the interruption. She glanced over at Marcus, who was once again reading his book. "I don't know," she answered, a note of hesitation in her voice. "He seems perfectly fine to me. Why?" Eleanor frowned, irritated by the woman's casual dismissal. "He's been acting suspiciously since the moment he boarded, constantly checking his bag as if he's hiding something. I tried to tell the flight attendant, but they don't seem to be taking it seriously. Isn't it better to be safe than sorry?" The woman looked at Marcus again, then back at Eleanor. "Perhaps, but I think if there were a real issue, the crew would handle it." "I'm sure it's nothing to worry about," she said, before pointedly turning back to her novel. Eleanor's jaw clenched, frustration building into a cold resolve. It was painfully clear now. If no one else was going to take this threat seriously, she would have to. Her eyes remained locked on Marcus, determined to be his shadow, watching every single move, waiting for the one sign that would prove her fears were justified. Marcus, completely unaware of Eleanor's intense scrutiny, continued to read, taking an occasional sip of water. He was content, lost in the world of his book, the steady drone of the plane's engines a comforting, hypnotic hum. His mind drifted to his upcoming meeting in Serenity Falls, to the complex case he was immersed in. He had no idea that just a few rows behind him, a passenger's simmering suspicion was about to boil over into something far more dangerous. Eleanor's anxiety twisted tighter with each passing minute. Her mind cycled through a highlight reel of news reports and tragedies, each one adding more fuel to her fear. She could feel her own heart pounding in her chest, a frantic drumbeat of certainty that danger was close, so very close. She would wait, she would watch, and if Marcus made a single wrong move, she would be the first to strike. The cabin of Flight 815 was filled with the mundane symphony of a long-haul journey, the drone of engines, the rustle of turning pages, the distant clinking of the beverage cart. Most passengers were settled, lost in films, or drifting into sleep. But Eleanor Vance's eyes were laser-focused on Marcus Thorne, her irritation and suspicion hardening into a dangerous conviction. Every time Marcus reached down to his bag, Eleanor's anxiety surged. She felt a hot flush creep up her neck, her thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. This wasn't right. No one checks a bag that frequently unless there is something to conceal. A sense of duty, of responsibility washed over her, yet each time she thought of confronting him, she faltered, uncertain of the storm she might unleash. Unable to bear the silence a moment longer, Eleanor leaned toward the elderly gentleman beside her. "Pardon me," she whispered, her voice tight with urgency. "Have you noticed the man near the emergency exit? He's incessantly checking his bag. Doesn't that strike you as suspicious?" The man peered up from his crossword puzzle, his eyes squinting behind thick glasses. He cast a cursory glance in Marcus's direction before returning his focus to the puzzle. "Can't say I've noticed a thing," he replied dismissively. "I'm sure it's nothing." Eleanor's frustration boiled. How could they all be so oblivious? She scanned the cabin, desperate for an ally, for someone to see the danger she saw so clearly. Her gaze fell upon a young woman across the aisle who seemed to be observing Marcus with a flicker of curiosity. Eleanor leaned over, her voice a hushed, urgent plea. "Excuse me, do you see that man by the exit? Doesn't he seem strange to you? As if he's hiding something?" The young woman looked at Marcus, then back at Eleanor, her expression polite but detached. "I don't know," she said slowly. "I think he's just reading his book. Is there a problem?" Eleanor's composure finally fractured. "Yes, there is. He has been acting erratically since we boarded, obsessively checking that bag as if it contains a bomb. I've alerted the flight attendant, but no one is doing a thing about it." The young woman shifted, visibly uncomfortable. "Maybe it's best to let the crew handle it? I mean, they're trained for these situations, aren't they?" Eleanor's voice rose, sharp and clear, catching the attention of nearby passengers. "And what if it's too late by then? What if something happens that we could have stopped? I am not the only one who feels this way." Her tone was insistent, an attempt to rally the indifferent faces around her. A few heads turned toward Marcus, who remained completely absorbed in his book, his posture the epitome of calm. Clara, the flight attendant, noticed the ripple of disturbance and moved swiftly toward Eleanor's seat. She leaned down, her voice low but firm. "Madam, I must ask you to lower your voice. You're beginning to disturb the other passengers. What is the issue now?" Eleanor gestured dramatically toward Marcus, her face a mask of grim determination. "I have been telling you that man is acting suspiciously. He is checking his bag over and over again. He is planning something. I can feel it." Clara inhaled deeply, her professionalism a steady anchor. "Madam, I have addressed this with you. We cannot interfere without concrete evidence of a threat. I must ask you to please calm down. I assure you, we are monitoring the entire cabin." Eleanor's voice climbed even louder, slicing through the cabin's quiet hum. "Monitoring? What does that even mean? You're just going to wait for a catastrophe to happen? That is not good enough." Murmurs began to spread through the cabin, looks of concern mixing with irritation. Marcus finally looked up, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, his eyes connecting with Eleanor's for a brief, confusing moment. Clara saw the situation escalating and knew she had to regain control. Madam, I understand you're concerned, but raising your voice and alarming everyone on this plane will not help. Please, lower your voice, or I will be forced to involve the captain." Eleanor shot to her feet, her face flushed with a furious energy. "No, you don't understand." "None of you do. You are all blind. Something is wrong, and I refuse to sit here and wait for disaster." Her voice was a sharp blade cutting through the cabin's peace. More heads turned, whispers spreading like wildfire. Clara placed a placating hand on Eleanor's arm, attempting to guide her back to her seat. "Madam, please sit down. Let's discuss this calmly." Eleanor violently shook off Clara's hand, her finger pointing directly at Marcus. "He is hiding something. I demand you search his bag right now." Marcus's eyes widened slightly as he took in the scene, the ring of staring faces, the panicked flight attendant, the accusing woman. Calmly, he closed his book and placed it in his lap. His voice, when he spoke, was perfectly level, a stark contrast to Eleanor's hysteria. "Madam, I can assure you there is nothing in my bag that would cause you any alarm. I am simply trying to have a peaceful flight, just like everyone else." Eleanor let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "A peaceful flight? You expect us to believe that? What are you hiding in there?" Clara moved between them, a human shield. Her voice was firm, commanding. "Okay, that is enough. We are not having this argument here. Please, madam, take your seat." "Sir, thank you for your patience." She turned to the wider audience of passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. There is no cause for alarm. Please return to your seats." The murmurs grew, and Clara knew she had to get Eleanor under control. She signaled to another flight attendant for support. Together they gently but firmly guided a still protesting Eleanor back to her seat, her voice a low, angry stream of accusations. Marcus remained seated, his face an unreadable mask. He watched as Eleanor was finally seated, her eyes still locked on him, burning with suspicion. He could feel the heavy weight of tension in the air, but he kept his composure. He understood that engaging would only feed the fire, especially with so many eyes on him. Instead, he picked up his book, found his place, and began to read again, his profound calm a silent rebuttal to the chaos around him. Clara, now at the front of the cabin, offered another reassuring smile to the passengers before disappearing into the galley to contact the captain. She had to report the incident, just in case it spiraled further. As she reached for the intercom, she glanced back at Marcus, who appeared utterly relaxed, and then at Eleanor, whose eyes still blazed with distrust. She sighed. It was going to be a very long flight. The drone of the aircraft's engines could not mask the palpable tension inside the cabin, a feeling like a string pulled taut, ready to snap. Passengers exchanged uneasy glances, some whispering in hushed tones, others feigning deep focus on their screens and books. Eleanor sat in her seat, seething. She could not comprehend why no one else was taking her seriously. She could feel them talking about her, their whispers like tiny barbs, but it didn't matter. She knew she was right. Her eyes snapped back to Marcus. He was reading, so placid, so unbothered by the scene she had just created. His very calmness was an infuriating provocation. How could he sit there so peacefully if he wasn't hiding something truly terrible? Her thoughts spiraled. If the crew refused to act, then she would have to force the issue herself. Marcus shifted in his seat, the weight of Eleanor's stare, a physical pressure. He glanced up, his eyes meeting hers. Her jaw was set, her eyes narrowed with a dangerous certainty. He recognized that look. It was the look of someone who believed they had uncovered a great evil, someone who would not be swayed by reason. He sighed under his breath and turned back to his book, but a deep sense of foreboding told him this was far from over. Eleanor couldn't take it anymore. Her patience shattered. Unbuckling her seatbelt, she rose and strode down the aisle toward Marcus, her steps sharp and determined. Heads turned to watch her purposeful advance. Marcus looked up as she approached, setting his book aside on his lap and meeting her gaze. "You!" Eleanor's voice boomed, slicing through the cabin's low hum. "I demand to know what is in that bag right this instant." She pointed at Marcus, her finger trembling with a potent mix of rage and fear. Marcus remained utterly calm. "Madam, there is nothing in this bag that is of any concern to you," he said, his voice even and low. "Please return to your seat. You are creating a disturbance." Clara rushed down the aisle, her face a mask of professional alarm. "Madam, please, you must return to your seat immediately," she urged, placing a gentle hand on Eleanor's arm. "You're upsetting the other passengers." Eleanor ripped her arm away, her focus entirely on Marcus. "No, I will not sit down until he shows us what's in that bag. I know he is hiding something dangerous, and I will not allow this plane to be put in jeopardy because you are all too blind to see the truth." Marcus looked at Clara, seeing the worry in her eyes, the fear that she was losing control of the situation. He kept his voice steady, controlled. "Madam, my bag contains only personal belongings. I promise you there is nothing in here that poses a threat to anyone." Eleanor laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "My promises? You expect us to just accept your word? You aren't fooling me. I've been watching you since we boarded, constantly checking that bag, like you're terrified someone will discover what's inside." "Well, I am not afraid to expose you." Clara stepped between them again, trying to create a buffer. Her voice was firm. "That is enough. Please, madam, you need to return to your seat now. If you continue to disrupt this flight, I will have no choice but to involve the captain directly." The confrontation had now captured the full attention of the aircraft. Passengers leaned into the aisle for a better view, their whispers growing louder. Marcus remained seated, his expression placid, his hands resting calmly on his book. He knew that any sudden move could be misinterpreted, could escalate the situation beyond repair. Eleanor ignored Clara, her eyes still locked on Marcus. "I am not sitting down until someone does something. If no one here will listen, I will make sure they understand what is happening." Her voice climbed with each word, her face flushed with fury. Clara turned to Marcus, her own voice now low, almost pleading. "Sir, I am so sorry, but could you please just show her what is in your bag? Perhaps if she sees there is nothing to fear, this can all be resolved." Marcus looked from Clara's desperate face to Eleanor's determined glower. He took a slow, deep breath and nodded. "Fine, if it will restore peace." He reached down, unzipped his carry-on, and carefully removed a small, clear plastic case filled with prescription vials. He held it up for both women to see. "This," Marcus said, his voice steady, "is what is in my bag. It's medication. I have a heart condition, and I must keep this with me at all times." Clara nodded, a wave of relief washing over her. "There, you see? There is nothing dangerous here." She turned to Eleanor. "Please, let's put this behind us and have a peaceful flight." But Eleanor's face contorted in disbelief. She shook her head, stepping even closer to Marcus. No, that's a trick. That can't be all. You are lying." "You must be." Marcus's calm demeanor never wavered. "Madam, I am not lying. This is the truth. Please, sit down." Eleanor's eyes darted around the cabin, searching for support. "Can't you all see? He's trying to deceive us. This isn't right. We need to search him properly." Clara stepped forward, her voice now hard as steel. "Madam, that is enough. Sit down now, or I will take further action." Ignoring her, Eleanor lunged, reaching for Marcus's bag. Before she could touch it, Marcus gently but firmly caught her wrist, stopping her mid-motion. His grip was strong, but his expression remained calm. "Madame, please, do not do this." "There is no need for this kind of behavior." Eleanor wrenched her hand free, her eyes wide with a new, wilder theory. "You're all in on it, aren't you? You're all protecting him." She stumbled backward, her voice rising in a fresh wave of hysteria. Clara quickly signaled another flight attendant, who moved to her side. "Madam, please come with us. We need to have a word with you at the rear of the plane." Eleanor hesitated, her eyes sweeping across the sea of faces staring at her, some sympathetic, most disapproving. She looked back at Marcus, still utterly convinced he was a threat. But with no support and facing the united resolve of the flight crew, she reluctantly turned and followed them toward the back of the plane, her steps slow and defeated. Marcus watched her go, feeling the weight of the passengers' stares upon him. He picked up his book again, trying to find his place. The tension in the cabin was thick, the whispers loud, but he forced his focus onto the printed page, refusing to let the situation unravel him. He had handled worse. As Clara escorted Eleanor away, she glanced back at Marcus, giving him a slight nod of gratitude. He nodded in return, a silent acknowledgement of the crisis they were both navigating. He knew this wasn't truly over, but for now, the immediate danger had passed. Marcus turned a page, his face a mask of calm as the plane soared through the clouds, heading west. The atmosphere in the cabin was thick with tension, like the air before a storm. Passengers had returned to their seats, but many still cast wary glances toward the rear of the plane where Eleanor had been taken. The low murmur of conversation had returned, now filled with speculation and unease. Marcus could feel the weight of their stares, but he kept his eyes fixed on his book, maintaining a calm exterior. At the back of the plane, Eleanor sat in a crew seat, her arms folded tightly, her face a blotchy red with fury. Clara stood beside her, attempting to reason with her, but Eleanor's mind was a fortress. Her voice, though low, was sharp with indignation. "I am telling you, he is lying." "He has to be." "People like him, they always have a story, always an excuse," Eleanor insisted. Clara kept her own voice soft, soothing. "Madam, I understand your concern, but Mr. Thorne showed us his medication. There is no evidence that he poses any threat. Please try to calm down. We must ensure the safety of everyone, and right now, your behavior is causing more alarm than anything else." Eleanor shook her head, her eyes burning. "You don't get it. You don't see it. He's dangerous, I know he is, and if you won't do something, then I will." Clara sighed, realizing that logic was useless. She nodded to Leo, the other flight attendant, who stood nearby ready to intervene. "Madam, we need you to remain calm for the rest of this flight. If you continue to cause a disturbance, we will have no other choice but to involve law enforcement upon landing." Eleanor's eyes widened and she leaned back, silent for a moment. Then she muttered, "You will regret not listening to me." Clara decided to leave Eleanor in Leo's care and return to the main cabin. She needed to reassure the other passengers and prevent the situation from escalating further. As she neared Marcus, she noticed how other passengers would quickly look away, pretending not to have been staring. Clara paused beside Marcus, who looked up from his book. "Mr. Thorne," Clara said quietly, "I want to apologize for that disturbance. Is there anything at all you need?" Marcus shook his head. "No, thank you. I understand. These things happen." "I appreciate the way you are handling it." Clara hesitated, then leaned closer so only he could hear. "I just want to be clear that we take this seriously. If you need anything, please do not hesitate to let us know. We want to ensure your comfort and safety, just as much as everyone else's." Marcus nodded, sensing her sincerity. "Thank you. I just want to get to Serenity Falls without any more drama." Clara offered a small, weary smile and continued on her way. Marcus watched her go, then tried to return his focus to his book, but the lingering tension made it difficult. He could feel the eyes, hear the whispers that followed Clara's conversation. He knew he needed to do something, say something, to extinguish the smoldering unease. Taking a deep breath, Marcus stood up, carefully placing his book on his seat. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his badge. It was a step he disliked taking, but he knew it might be the only way to diffuse the situation completely. He walked down the aisle, stopping beside Clara. His voice was calm, but projected clearly for those nearby to hear. "Excuse me, may I have everyone's attention for just a moment?" The cabin fell silent. Passengers turned to look at him. Marcus held up his badge, displaying it for all to see. "My name is Detective Marcus Thorne. I am an undercover detective with the Metropolis City Police Department. I have been on assignment, and the medication in my bag is, as I said, for a heart condition. I apologize if my behavior caused any alarm, but I assure you there is no threat on this aircraft." A moment of stunned silence hung in the air. Relief washed over some faces, surprise over others. A few passengers exchanged glances, nodding slowly. Marcus's calm, authoritative presence seemed to drain the fear from the room. He turned to Clara, who gave him a small, grateful nod. But the quiet was shattered by Eleanor's voice, loud and indignant from the back of the plane. "You're lying! This is just another trick." "How do we know that badge is real? How do we know you're not using it to smuggle something dangerous on board?" Marcus turned to face her, his expression steady. "Ma'am, if you wish, you can call my department to verify my identity. The number is on the back of the badge. I am not here to cause harm. I am simply trying to do my job and get to my destination safely." Eleanor's face was flushed, her eyes wide with rage. "No, I don't believe you. This is all a ruse. You can't fool me. The tension began to ratchet up again. Marcus could see the raw panic in Eleanor's eyes, the paranoia that had completely taken hold. He knew nothing he could say would convince her, but he also knew he had to maintain control. "Ma'am," Marcus said softly, "I understand that you are frightened, but I promise you, you have nothing to fear from me. Let's just finish this flight without any more trouble. When we land, you are welcome to have the authorities verify everything." Eleanor shook her head, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow, her voice trembling. No, I won't wait. I won't sit here and do nothing while you... Her voice trailed off, her words lost to her panic. Clara stepped forward, her voice firm. "Ma'am, please sit down. We have spoken with Mr. Thorne. Everything is under control. We need you to remain calm." Eleanor looked around, seeing the faces of the other passengers watching her, some with concern, some with open disapproval. She saw she had no allies, no one to support her crusade. Slowly, she sank back into her seat, still shaking her head in disbelief. Marcus watched her for a moment, then turned back to Clara. "Thank you," he said quietly. He walked back to his seat, feeling the eyes on him, but pointedly ignoring them. He sat down and opened his book, though his mind was far from the words on the page. The flight continued in a strained silence for several minutes. The tension was still present, but it was no longer on the verge of exploding. Passengers gradually relaxed, turning back to their own activities. Clara moved silently through the cabin, her eyes checking on both Marcus and Eleanor, ready to intervene at a moment's notice. Eleanor sat at the back, her face pale, her hands trembling. She felt the judgment in everyone's stares. She couldn't understand why they couldn't see what she saw, why they so readily accepted Marcus's story. But she was out of fight. She was alone in her fear, and for now, she could only wait until they landed. Marcus sat quietly, his eyes on his book but his senses on high alert, aware of every slight movement around him. He knew this wasn't over, but he hoped the worst had passed. He focused on his breathing, keeping his heart rate steady, staying calm. There were still hours left in the flight, and anything could still happen. The cabin of Flight 815 remained tense long after Marcus's revelation. While some passengers had settled, others continued to cast uneasy glances toward him and toward the back of the plane, where Eleanor sat, isolated and seething. The ambient conversation was low and hushed, as if everyone feared reigniting the conflict that had so recently erupted. Clara moved like a ghost through the aisles, offering quiet reassurances, trying to weave a sense of normalcy back into the atmosphere. She could feel the unease, a toxic ripple emanating from the rear of the aircraft, where Eleanor's frustration festered. Clara knew she had to keep the situation contained. At the back of the plane, Leo kept a vigilant watch on Eleanor. She sat with her arms locked across her chest, her face a mask of stubborn defiance. Leo had handled his share of difficult passengers, but this felt different. The sheer intensity of Eleanor's fear and anger was unsettling. He leaned in as Clara approached, his voice a low murmur. "She's still on edge," Leo said quietly. "I don't think she's going to calm down any time soon." Clara nodded, her gaze shifting to Eleanor. "I know, we need to ensure she doesn't cause another scene. Can you stay with her? Try to keep her engaged in something neutral? I'll check in with the captain, see if we need to prepare for any additional measures." Leo nodded grimly. "I'll do my best." Clara made her way to the cockpit. Captain Eva Rostova turned in her seat, her expression serious. "What's the status, Clara?" she asked. "We've stabilized things for the moment," Clara reported, "but the passenger, Eleanor, is still highly agitated. She refuses to believe Detective Thorne is telling the truth, even after seeing his badge. I'm concerned she might try something else before we land." The captain frowned. "We can't have another outburst. It could trigger a widespread panic. If it becomes necessary, we may need to restrain her to ensure the safety of everyone on board." Clara nodded, understanding the gravity of the decision. "I'll keep a close watch. Leo is with her now. We'll do everything we can to avoid that, but we will be prepared if it comes to it." Captain Rostova gave a curt nod. "Keep me informed. If anything changes, we'll notify air traffic control and have security on the ground waiting for us." Clara left the cockpit, her mind racing through contingency plans. She had to keep Eleanor calm, She returned to the rear of the plane where Leo stood guard. Eleanor looked up as Clara approached, her eyes flashing. "So, are you here to apologize? To finally admit that I was right?" Clara shook her head, her voice gentle but firm. "No, ma'am. I'm here to make sure you're all right. We need everyone to remain calm and cooperative so we can reach our destination safely." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "Cooperative? You mean compliant. You want me to just sit here quietly while that man carries out whatever sinister plan he has? I will not. I cannot believe you are all falling for his act." Clara took a deep breath. "Detective Thorne is not lying. He has provided his credentials, and there is nothing to suggest he is a threat. Your behavior, however, is causing significant concern. We need you to stay calm and remain in your seat. If you are unable to do that, we will be forced to take further measures." Eleanor's eyes widened. "Further measures? What are you going to do? Arrest me? I am the one trying to keep people safe here." Clara met Eleanor's gaze without flinching. "Ma'am, we are responsible for the safety of all 187 souls on this flight. If you continue to cause a disturbance, we will have to restrain you for the remainder of the journey. Please, just stay calm and remain seated." Eleanor glared at Clara, but something in her unyielding tone must have registered. She leaned back, still fuming, but her voice dropped. "Fine, but if something happens, it's on all of your heads." Clara nodded, relieved that Eleanor was, for now, complying. She signaled to Leo to remain vigilant and then returned to her duties, checking on passengers with reassuring smiles. The tension was still a heavy blanket over the cabin, but it was no longer threatening to suffocate them. As Clara moved down the aisle, Marcus watched her approach. He had been quietly observing, aware of every movement, every shift in the cabin's mood. He could see the strain on Clara's face and the way her eyes darted between him and the rear of the plane. When she reached his row, he looked up. "How's it going back there?" Marcus asked softly. Clara sighed. "She's still upset, but she's staying put for now. We have a close eye on her. I am so sorry this has caused you so much trouble." "We are doing our best," Marcus nodded. "I know you are. You're handling it professionally. Let me know if there's anything I can do." Clara gave him a small, grateful smile. "Just keep doing what you're doing. The less we escalate, the better." Marcus returned to his book, but his senses remained on high alert. He could feel the tension lingering, a subtle undercurrent that could resurface at any moment. At the back of the plane, Eleanor sat rigidly, her mind a spinning vortex of paranoia. She could not believe everyone had sided with Marcus, that they couldn't see the obvious danger. Her anger simmered just below the surface, but she kept it contained, knowing another outburst would only worsen her own situation. Leo stood nearby, watching her closely, seeing the turmoil in her eyes, the white-knuckled grip on the armrests. He remained ready to act. The minutes stretched into an hour. The flight fell into a tense, fragile rhythm. Linda continued her rounds, keeping a watchful eye on both Marcus and Eleanor, keenly aware that she was the thin line maintaining the peace. Finally, Clara approached Leo and nodded. "I think we're stable for now," she whispered. "Just keep watch." Leo nodded, his eyes never leaving Eleanor. "Will do." Clara turned away, her mind still focused on maintaining control. The plane continued its journey, carrying its cargo of anxious souls toward their destination, each one hoping the fragile peace would hold. In her seat, Eleanor continued to fume, but for now she remained silent, her anger a coiled serpent waiting for another chance to strike. And Marcus, though outwardly calm, remained vigilant, knowing that his composure was the key to keeping the peace until they landed. The aircraft began its descent, and the seatbelt sign chimed on. Captain Rostova's calm, reassuring voice filled the cabin, announcing their approach into Serenity Falls. A collective shift occurred as passengers prepared for landing, the tension that had plagued the flight finally beginning to dissipate with the prospect of arrival. Marcus Thorne felt the gentle tilt of the plane and closed his book, stowing it securely in his carry-on, double-checking that his medication was safe. He glanced toward the back where Eleanor still sat under Leo's watchful eye. She hadn't caused another scene, but her rigid posture and darting eyes told him she was far from calm. Clara walked the aisle one last time, checking seat belts. She paused at Marcus's seat, offering a weary smile. "Almost there," she said quietly. "Thank you for your patience." Marcus nodded. "I just want this to be over without any more trouble." "You've handled it all exceptionally well." Clara returned the nod, appreciative of his demeanor. "Let's hope it stays quiet until we're on the ground." As Clara continued her checks, she saw Leo signal her. Her heart sank as she quickened her pace. At the back, Leo leaned in, his voice low. She's been muttering to herself. She's getting agitated again. We need to be ready. Clara glanced at Eleanor, whose face was flushed with frustration. Clara knelt beside her, keeping her voice soft. "Ma'am, we're about to land. I need you to stay calm and remain seated. We're almost there." Eleanor's eyes snapped to Clara, her voice a harsh whisper. "This is not over. I am not letting him get away with whatever he's planning. You'll see. You will all see." A chill went down Clara's spine, but she forced a smile. "Please, just stay seated until we land. Everything will be handled on the ground." Eleanor didn't reply, but she made no move to get up. Clara took a deep breath and returned to her station, signaling for Leo to keep a close watch. As the plane touched down, a collective sigh of relief rippled through the passengers. The familiar sounds of unbuckling belts and rustling bags filled the cabin. Marcus remained seated in no hurry. He waited as others began to retrieve their luggage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Rostova's voice announced, "welcome to Serenity Falls. Please remain in your seats until the aircraft has come to a complete stop at the gate." Marcus felt the plane taxiing and glanced out the window. Clara approached him, her face calm but focused. "We've notified airport security. They will be waiting at the gate," she said softly. Marcus nodded. "That's probably for the best?" "Thank you." As the plane stopped and the seatbelt sign switched off, passengers began to disembark. Clara and Leo positioned themselves near Eleanor, ready to intervene. The cabin door opened, and two uniformed security officers stepped aboard. Clara directed them toward the back. A tall officer with a calm demeanor approached Eleanor. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us. We'd like to ask you a few questions about the incident during the flight." Eleanor's eyes widened. "No, I'm not going anywhere." "I did nothing wrong. It's him. He's the one you should be arresting." She pointed a trembling finger in Marcus's direction. The officer remained calm. "Ma'am, we just need to speak with you. If you could please cooperate, we can get this sorted out." Eleanor stood abruptly, her voice rising. "You're all in on it. You're protecting him. I'm the only one who sees the truth." The second officer, a woman with a firm presence, gently took Eleanor's arm. "Ma'am, we need you to calm down. Please come with us, and we will handle this." Eleanor tried to pull away, her voice becoming a shrill cry. "No, this isn't right. You can't do this." The officers, maintaining their composure, expertly guided the protesting Eleanor toward the exit, her cries echoing through the cabin. Passengers watched in a stunned silence. Clara followed closely, ensuring a smooth handoff. Tom remained seated, watching as Eleanor was led off the plane. He could feel the eyes of the other passengers on him, but he ignored them. Clara returned a moment later, her expression a mix of relief and exhaustion. "They're taking her to a holding area for questioning," she explained quietly. "We've given the authorities a full report." Marcus nodded. "Thank you. You handled everything with true professionalism." "I appreciate it." Clara gave a small smile. "Just doing my job. I'm glad we made it without any more issues." As the last of the passengers disembarked, Marcus stood and retrieved his bag. He walked down the aisle, feeling the tension finally leave his shoulders. He nodded to Clara one last time before stepping onto the jet bridge. In the terminal, Marcus saw Eleanor being escorted by security, still arguing, her voice echoing off the walls. He watched them guide her toward a secure area, her protests fading into the distance. Marcus turned and headed for baggage claim, his stride steady. The events of the flight replayed in his mind. He had faced far worse, but the weight of being unjustly accused still left a bitter taste. As he reached the bustling claim area, Tom took a deep breath, ready to move on. Behind him, the passengers of Flight 815 dispersed, talking quietly, some glancing in the direction Eleanor had been taken. The tension of the flight was dissolving, replaced by the normal chaos of the airport. For Marcus, the day wasn't over. There would be reports to file and questions to answer. But for now, he let the noise of the airport wash over him, a welcome reminder that life moves on, even after moments of profound conflict and misunderstanding. As he walked toward the exit, he felt a sense of resolve. Today had been a test, but he had met it with dignity and professionalism. And in the end, that was all anyone could ask.